Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the show. This is Reservations, and I'm Jeremy Blair.
And I'm Rain Wayland. So, Jeremy, do you think we should warn everyone if they hear fireworks in the background?
Yeah, you might hear some fireworks. It is New Year's Eve.
Well, as of this recording,
right
when this episode comes out, it'll be 2025.
2025. Yeah, we've been doing this for almost 6 years, I guess.
April, I believe, will be 6 years.
That's a long
I think
time.
That's when the first episode was posted.
It's a long time.
Yeah, 6 years and about to do 11 seasons.
That's right. No signs of stopping, guys.
Nah.
No, you see how many movies there are? You know.
I know.
It's right.
Mom asked me that one time. She's like, "Do you think you'll ever run out?" I'm like, "No."
I'm
like, as long as there are people out there that want to make movies, there'll be two assholes on the internet,
two clowns, two buffoons,
who are going to talk about it.
Well, speaking of making movies, this is a good segue.
Oh my god,
so,
yes.
I met a gentleman today. His name is Pierce Cravens. He is a local producer and filmmaker where I live in the Dallas area. And we got to talking, and I told him, I have this silly podcast that we do, blah, blah, blah. And he goes, "Oh, well, that's fine. I'm a producer. I just produced this movie, and it's very, very good. I really recommend it." And I go, "Okay, great. What's it called?" And he said, "It's called Ghostlight." And
yeah, hopefully future rain.
Poster, right?
Yeah.
So, and he was saying that it's won the John Cassavetes Award. It's produced by IFC, and that it's on AMC Plus right now, and it's in talks to be in Hulu later on. And I go, "Oh wow, that's amazing." And he goes, "Yeah, it is so good. Like, you have to see it." And I go, "Okay, great." So I wrote it down. I found it. I rented it, and I watched about a third of it today at work. Unfortunately, I work all day, and then I come home and I have a 4-month-old, and so I will finish it eventually. What I saw so far is very compelling, wonderful filmmaking. It's grounded in a very interesting way that the main actors are a real family. They are a husband and wife and a daughter. So I think that's really interesting, and it's a cool way to portray the realism of the film. Now, so far, we have gotten some hints of some family turmoil going on, and so that's going to be really interesting moving forward. So I'm very, very excited to finish it. First, I mean, this first go around, this first third is incredible. I really have been enjoying it.
Yeah. When you told me about it, I was like, okay, I want to find out a little bit more, and yeah, I saw that it's got a certified fresh 99% on Rotten Tomatoes. I think the audience score is at 96%. So like critics and audiences are like this.
Well, and here's what I was worried about at first, because I saw the Rotten Tomatoes rating, and I recognized a couple of the actors. I recognized Tara Mullen. She's in Contagion, and I've seen the movie several times, so I remember her from Contagion. And then I saw the Rotten Tomatoes score, and I go, "Oh no, this isn't one of those Christian movies, is it?" Because if it's a low budget indie film, and you only recognize a couple of people, and it's got such a high rating on Rotten Tomatoes, usually that's what that means, right? So I looked. No, it's not. So don't worry. It's not like an Angel production or anything.
We should also mention, if Pierce did tell you he was going to check us out. So
he did. Yeah.
Pierce, if you're listening, I hope that didn't offend you.
No, I mean, listen, those movies kind of leave a bad taste in my mouth, whatever, it doesn't matter. But no, so far it is wonderful. I'm really enjoying it. I really love the premise of this, having artistic expression, sort of giving someone the therapy that they need to get through a tough time. I really enjoy that premise, and shout out to Kelly Sullivan and Alex Thompson, who are the directors, and Kelly Sullivan is the sole writer of the film. I'm loving it so far. I can't wait to finish it. I hate that I have to watch movies this way sometimes,
Yeah.
but it's okay. I mean, any way you can consume film I think, is fine.
Yeah. I watched about the same amount as you at work during my lunch, and my game plan was to finish it when I got home. But Ashley and I left to have dinner out, and just didn't get a chance to. But I plan to, because, again, yeah, like you said, it's so compelling, and I like these hints at this inner family turmoil that the movie just doesn't give us at the front. Most films that kind of deal with an inner family problem, you know all the facts going in, and I really like that they withheld these facts, which I'm sure will be revealed as the movie goes on.
Right.
But yeah, man, I'm glad that happened.
Yeah, me too.
I told Mom about it, and I even sent her. Again, Pierce, if you're listening, I hope you don't find this weird. I sent her his IMDb page. I was like, Jeremy met this guy today, and Mom was like, "That's really cool." To give, again, Pierce, if you're listening, that'd be great. I've said that 3 times already. I know I feel weird. But to give you a little backstory, Pierce, my stepdad is also a film producer, so I was kind of seeing if maybe y'all had crossed paths at some point, but I don't think so. But Mom was like, "Yeah, that's really cool," and I was like, "Yeah, like he told Jeremy about this movie, and we're gonna watch it." All my coworkers said we should review it for this episode, and I was like, maybe
a little too soon, a little too fast. And
I was like, maybe at a later date. But yeah, we both agreed that we had to shout out Pierce at the top of the show, and Ghostlight. If you've got AMC Plus, check it out.
Yeah.
If not, you can rent it or buy it.
I don't know a single person on this planet that has AMC Plus, but I'm sure someone does.
I don't, and I refuse.
Well, as far as horror
AMC
movies
Plus
are concerned, they share
Shudder.
They share Shudder, yeah. So I usually find my stuff on Shudder instead of AMC Plus, but
yeah.
So Pierce Cravens, thank you so much for the recommendation. It's wonderful. We're really enjoying it, and keep it up, man, because this is dynamite work. So
yeah, 100%. But with that being said, Jeremy, so before we tell everyone what movie we're doing today, I just want to give an apology to everyone that this episode's coming out late. I wasn't fully prepared for this movie. When we said it last week, I was like, yeah, and as soon as I turned it on, I was like, oh no, oh no, this is, and I still feel like I'm not fully prepared, but okay. We're not going to delay any longer. So Jeremy, what are we talking about today?
Today we are talking about Todd Haynes's sort of unconventional biopic of Bob Dylan with I'm Not There.
So I distinctly remember hearing about this movie when it was announced, and full confession, I didn't know who Bob Dylan was.
Interesting.
I'd heard the name, but I'd never really heard any of his music, not fully. Now, of course, I'm very educated, and then we've also done Inside Llewyn Davis, which is sort of Bob Dylan adjacent.
Sure.
But yeah, so I remember seeing the trailer for the movie, and I just didn't really understand it, and I was just like, I mean, that's cool, I guess. And this was early days of my ability to recall, so I was like, I recognize some of these names, like Christian Bale, of course, Heath Ledger, Cate Blanchett. I was like, oh, and Richard Gere. But I was like, Ben Whishaw, I don't know who that is.
Right.
Michelle Williams, I don't know who that is. Now I'm like, why did I ever sleep on this movie?
Yeah.
Because to get it out of the way now, I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. I told you today, I love how linear it is. which we'll get to in later. But yeah, I still feel like I'm not fully prepared because I feel like what Todd Haynes really does with this movie is captures really the mythology of Bob Dylan really well.
Yeah. I wrote in my notes that this isn't a portrait of a person, it's a portrait of a myth. It's the portrait of a legend.
Mm-hmm.
That, people are putting upon Bob Dylan, and we'll get to all of that. But yeah, so a quick synopsis, if I can even give one, is this movie is based on what they call the mini lives and music of Bob Dylan. We have several actors portraying versions of Bob Dylan in a stripped down format. So we have Christian Bale plays Jack, Kate Blanchett plays Jude, Heath Ledger plays Robbie, Ben Winshaw, Arthur, Richard Gere, Billy the Kid, and Marcus Carl Franklin is Woody Chaplin. So, and Chris Christopherson is the narrator, who is a real life friend of Bob Dylan. So, and the movie just... Oh, go ahead.
It was Woody Guthrie.
Oh, thank you. That's not what it... Oh, it says Woody / Chaplin boy. I apologize. Woody Guthrie, thank you.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, I'm reading it off IMDb. So, all right. So each section is sort of its own style. I personally like Jack's the best. His is the documentary style. Than Christian Bale's, and Julianne Moore, who's portraying basically Joan Baez in the documentary section. Heath Ledger, his section with Robbie is more of the personal life and romantic relationships of Bob Dylan. Kate Blanchett is the rebel artist, sort of thumbing his nose at his fans and his critics and the media and all of that. Ben Winshaw is Arthur. He is more of the poet. He's based on a French poet, and I forgot to write the French poet's name down.
It's his actual name, Arthur. That's a real person. Oh. That's a real person's name.
I don't think I ever put that together. And Richard Gere is Billy the Kid, who Bob Dylan admired, even titled an album after him. And Marcus Carl Franklin is the blues and folk influences of Woody Guthrie, and sort of his inspiration in that aspect. And I don't even think I said that Christian Bale is more of just the straightforward music early days of his folk career. And the movie goes back and forth between all of these. And I love the way that it's done. I love that we're going back and forth. We're not just stuck with one and then we're going to the other. As time progresses, they're all happening all at once. Because Bob Dylan is all of these things all at the same time. So Bob Dylan is this multifaceted person, according to this film. And so, of course, we're not going to follow this thing one after the other. It's all going to be happening at once. And that makes perfect sense, right? I saw Kate Blanchett's part is modeled more after 8.5 in the style that it's filmed in. Even has an 8.5 reference with Jude as the balloon or as the kite. So that was cool. So do I love the film? I don't know. I don't think so. I really like it. It's one of the first, it's one of the only times I see Charlotte Gainsbourg not in a Lars von Trier movie, so that was cool. And she's fantastic. As a whole, the movie is fantastic. It's very well executed. I love the visual language. I love the analogy and the metaphor, and I love that it's surreal and it's avant-garde and it pushes genre in all sorts of ways. So I enjoy that, and I really, really like the idea of having multiple people playing it.
Mm-hmm.
Without actually playing, they're not called Bob Dylan. You know what I mean? They are just
Right.
parts of him, and I like that. There's a few things I don't like.
Yes, which I know one of them.
Yes. Well, and we can talk about it a little bit because I feel that this is a part of Bob Dylan, and in preparation for this, I rewatched I think the first half of the Rolling Thunder review, the Martin Scorsese documentary that came out a few years ago about the Rolling Thunder review tour from
Yeah.
1976. So yeah, so number one, it's Ben Winshaw. I don't enjoy Arthur's part, and I think the reason is like it's and I don't know if they did it on purpose, and I think that's sort of where I'm at because if I knew they were sort of saying that this is sort of a negative side of Bob Dylan, this sort of pretentious, self-indulgent, self-aggrandizing, like faux philosopher intellectual, then I'm like, okay, I like that because that's sort of it's showing a negative side of Bob Dylan. I don't think that's their intention. Um, I think their
Yeah.
intention is to show his poetic side of him, and it's just something that I just can't. Here's an example,
Okay.
and I'm going to tie in Rolling Thunder here in just a second. So
Okay.
Arthur has a line that says, "I accept chaos. I don't know whether it accepts me." That means nothing. Those are words that mean nothing.
Okay.
It sounds deep. Um, it sounds intellectual. It sounds poetic, but really, that doesn't mean anything. And so, like, what do you mean? It chaos? Who cares? Like, that doesn't. It's pretentious bullshit. And
Uh-huh.
this is the part of Bob Dylan I don't like. And I think it's because of the people he surrounds himself with. And I'm going to give you some examples. So, if you decide to ever watch Rolling Thunder,
which I plan to because it's the Criterion release is on my wish list. So
it is great. The documentary is amazing. The music's great. You get to see some behind the scenes stuff of Bob Dylan that's really cool. I don't put him as high of a pedestal as everyone else does. I don't view everything he does as genius or interesting or or artistic choice. I just think that he's a person who is very good at songwriting, and he can see the world and see things in different ways. I'm not saying that he's not talented or not unique in that aspect, but I don't think he's some sort of deity like some of these other people.
okay.
So about 15 minutes in, maybe 10 to 15 minutes in, they're showing some footage of him, Joan Baez, Patti Smith, Allen Ginsberg, a whole bunch of people playing at this bar or whatever. And Patti Smith gets up there. I don't know if you know who Patti Smith is.
Don't you hate her?
I do. And part of the reason is this documentary because it shows her in her section of this I guess impromptu concert is she's doing a improvised spoken word folk song.
Okay.
It is complete nonsense, and it's such a waste of time, and it is taking no skill. because it's not making sense. Like, she's not. This isn't like someone who's freestyle rapping, who will create double entendres, who create a story, a narrative, connections with rhyme. She's not doing anything. She's just
Mhm.
talking. Okay? She's
Okay.
telling the story that she's making up on the spot, and it's complete bullshit. And people are just hanging on her every word, and it's so bizarre. It's like, at this point, it's 1975, 1976, around this point. She has been told most of her professional career that she's a genius. She has very
Okay.
popular songs from the mid to late 60s, and she's like a folk icon. She's like she's talked about up there with like Linda Ronstadt and Joan Baez. Like, she's one of those.
Uh-huh.
And okay, this is not a joke. I'm not trying to be funny. This isn't trying to me to put her down. I think they are mistaking genius with undiagnosed ADHD or autism. I'm being dead serious. Which is fine, but it is complete nonsense. And
Okay.
then, holy Jesus, man. And I'm so happy that the film also highlights this as well, is he was friends with Allen Ginsberg.
Right.
Allen Ginsberg is a washed up, hippie, pretentious, nobody loser. Okay?
Okay.
Especially at this point, in my personal opinion. Because it's the same thing. When he is in this documentary, and I like to think in my head canon that
Okay.
they chose David Cross because they were making fun of him. I hope so. Because at this point in his career, Allen Ginsberg isn't important. He came up in the poetry and writing scene with Jack Kerouac. They were friends.
Mm-hmm.
And Allen Ginsberg wrote Howl, which is a collection of poetry that is extremely important, especially in the gay and sexual revolutions during the late 60s and in New York City and all of that.
It took me a minute.
Yeah.
For those of you who even really care about Allen Ginsberg, Daniel Radcliffe plays him in Kill Your Darlings.
That's right.
Very early Allen Ginsberg.
I forgot who Dane DeHaan plays. It's not Kerouac.
And I've got he plays Lucien Carr.
So
Kerouac is played by Jack Hudson.
That's right.
And Ben Foster's William S. Burroughs.
And again, like, during that time, Allen Ginsberg he's doing really interesting stuff. It's interesting, and it's making waves, and it's very cool. And the movie Howl, I don't know if you've seen that with James Franco. It's about him fighting for the right. I think it's for it to be in print at all, but I think it might also just be it to be in schools. Howl, because of its sexually explicit material, they were like, absolutely not. Like, but he goes, no, I think it's important because it's poetry, it's art, it's blah blah. And it's about that court case. But at this point, again, it's the same thing with Patti Smith. He's been told his whole life that everything he has to say is profound and interesting and important and deep and all of that. And there's a section in this documentary, holy God. They're at a museum, they're in Plymouth, which is where the tour kicks off, in Plymouth. And he's talking to a kid at a museum, and they're in this section with the pilgrims and the Native Americans, and it's the whatever in their wax statues. And he said to the kid, would you rather be a pilgrim or a Native American? And the kid said a pilgrim. And he goes, oh wow, that's really interesting, because the pilgrims, they just become wax statues. And the kid goes, yeah, but the Native Americans are also wax statues. And he goes, Yeah, well, we're all wax statues. Fuck you forever, Allen Ginsberg. Because he was just bested, you know?
By a child.
And he tried to come up with something profound to say, and he said something that is complete nonsense. And that means nothing. That sounds good, not really, but out of context might sound good. But it doesn't mean anything. And that's how this Arthur character felt to me. Like Bob Dylan surrounded himself with, to me, they're phonies. Like Allen Ginsberg at this point is a phony, and I do not like him. And I think Patti Smith is kind of out of her mind.
Okay.
And so when Arthur came up in the film, I just, what he's saying doesn't resonate with me, I guess. And it just seemed like a bunch of sentences that sounds good, but doesn't mean anything. That was a long tangent. Go ahead.
Yeah. I really hope the YouTube video pops off and people can just see me reacting to you. But I'm going to give you some grace. I see what you're saying. I do. And again, I don't think it was their, I don't think they were trying to show Bob in a negative light. I don't know. I have no real opinions on Ben Whishaw. I mean, granted, we did a whole, 2-movie episode with him playing
I
a
love
bear.
Ben Whishaw. Let's get that out of the way. I don't like
Arthur. Yeah, so do I. I think I don't have an opinion just because I feel like he's not on screen as much as the other actors that are portraying these versions. So I don't really.
Okay.
I just kind of see him as sort of like the interlude in between each parts.
Yeah. No, I agree. 100%.
The one part that I struggled with, and I was texting you about it, was the Billy the Kid part. Don't get me wrong. I think Richard Gere plays a fantastic Billy the Kid in Hiding. And of course, he's one of the few actors playing Bob Dylan that's not doing his very nasally voice.
That's true.
He's just speaking. But I don't know. You said the Rolling Thunder Review documentary will answer that.
It gives you some context in some of the elements in that section. For instance, by the way, I could not have been happier to see Jim James in this film. Jim James is the lead singer of My Morning Jacket. And, and he's the leader of that brass band in the Billy the Kid section. And so the white face paint is from the Rolling Thunder Review. Bob Dylan would wear white face paint. And they would also wear masks during some songs during the concerts, which is why Richard Gere puts on that mask. And it's those exact masks that are the sort of
like the clear.
So it cleared that up a little bit. I'll go, okay, well, that makes sense. You and I are never going to understand all of this movie because there are so many references and nods and like Easter eggs from his career, from his songs, from his lyrics, from his personal life that we're just never going to get because I don't know that much about Bob Dylan. All right.
Yeah. I agree. I don't know that much either. I really started to do like a deep dive into his music. Don't laugh at me. After I saw the trailer for A Complete Unknown, because I really wanted to go in that movie having a better appreciation of Bob Dylan. And so I did a deep dive into his music, and it was very progressive for the time he released it. which I think is insane
Mhm.
that it was so progressive the way it was, and I think I agree. I think one of my favorite part of the whole movie is all of the Jack Rollins documentary, because I think that that's kind of like what you said last week. Kate Blanchett is definitely the version of Bob Dylan when he switched to electric guitar, which is very overt.
Well, I loved
Um,
the analogy of them opening their cases and pulling out machine guns, because that is my understanding. That's how it felt to audiences who looked up to Bob Dylan and followed his career and loved him. They felt betrayed. They felt like, he's turning on us because, he's changing his sound. Um, and I mean, I get that.
yeah.
But Bob Dylan
Now,
doesn't give a shit.
well, and I was gonna say, and now in about to be 2025, an artist changing their sound, people are just like, well,
I mean,
okay,
it sucks, but it
yeah.
didn't seem like such a betrayal. I mean, people really latched on to early Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan was,
Do you think it was because he was very accessible? Is not the right word, but do you think that's what it was? Is that his music maybe just kind of like with the Jack Rollins documentary stuff, that it's almost like his music really gravitated towards people who were thinking those same
well,
things.
yeah. I mean, they were political. They were
Mm-hmm.
stories. They were poetry. They they were folk songs, right? If it's never new and it never gets
Mm.
old, it's a folk song. Um,
That's a reference to Inside Llewyn Davis. Everyone, it's a little inside baseball.
and yeah,
Go listen to that episode after we finish this one.
and I mean, so yeah, I mean, it seems like the music. I mean, I'm not saying that everyone on the planet loved Bob Dylan, but those who did loved Bob
Mm-hmm.
Dylan, and they loved
Yeah,
Joan Baez, and they loved that sound, and those are fireworks. Uh,
I was about to say, I'm like, what is happening?
Kate Blanchett just opened her guitar case. Um,
Dude, okay. I do want to talk about that analogy. I was not expecting it.
yeah.
I was like, "Oh my god!" And then when it cuts to hearing the music, I was like, "Oh,
Yeah.
that's really good."
Well, and it was a gut punch, for those who again loved his music and loved his sound and loved the storytelling of Bob Dylan's music. I tend to gravitate towards his music that are stories. I really enjoy those, even if it's kind of nonsense. Even if they're nonsense stories, I still like them. Like,
You mean like how Dewey Cox makes fun of him?
yeah, kind of.
Do you understand what he's saying? Hey, this song is really deep.
And okay. I guess this is a good transition into, so why do people love Bob Dylan so much? And I think it's because, like, if you connect with a piece of art, right, you are so appreciative of the person who made it because you had such a positive reaction to it, whether it be a painting, a movie, a song, a sculpture, right? You kind of put these people up on a pedestal. You think they
Mm-hmm.
made this thing that I absolutely love. They must be, these ethereal beings. They must be so mythical and interesting and mysterious and so much smarter and better and whatever, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so, like, I get that. I get that, Bob Dylan, who is an expert writer, he is incredible at lyricist. He's incredible at the music, the songwriting, everything. He is great. His voice maybe not be for everybody. And I get that, which is why, you hear some of his songs sung by other people. Like, if you heard him sing All Along the Watchtower, you'd be like, that was fine. You hear Jimi Hendrix do it, you love it. So It's, same with Knocking on Heaven's Door. I mean, I'd rather hear Led Zeppelin do that. I don't want to hear Bob Dylan do that.
Oh my God, that was a Bob Dylan song?
Oh, I'm almost certain. Hold on. It's either that one or it's it's got to be Knocking on Heaven's Door. And what's funny is Chris Christopherson is the same way. Like if you were to hear Chris Christopherson sing his songs, you wouldn't like him very much because he's not that much of a singer. But you hear,
it was Bob Dylan,
okay.
Knocking on Heaven's Door, and then it was covered by Guns N' Roses.
Oh, Stairway to Heaven? That's what I was thinking of. Yeah. Anyway, but you hear Janis Joplin saying "Me and Bobby McGee." Well, there you go. So
yeah.
So I mean, if you connect with it, and it's sort of this very mysterious, introspective, up for interpretation. You sort of feel like this person must be, this very mysterious, intellectual, otherworldly being, and I'm like that. I mean, I get that way about filmmakers I love, and especially if they're like, see, Bob Dylan set himself up for this, and I don't think he did it on purpose, because Bob Dylan is quiet, and he doesn't really like to make eye contact, and he sort of just keeps to himself and does what he wants, and he's not very outspoken. I mean, he would fuck with the media and all that when they would interview him, but so with the Beatles, which is fantastic. But he's a sort of a mysterious figure, and in the Rolling Thunder documentary, someone calls him, he's sort of like a blank slate. Like you see what you want when you look at Bob Dylan. And so
okay,
I think people put a lot on him that isn't necessarily true. I think that people put on this mythos and this legend onto him kind of just because there's nothing else to grab onto. So if you already go in thinking these things and putting him up on that pedestal, and you see him do anything, you're going to think that it's mysterious, interesting, and artistic or intentional, or he is the music version of Stanley Kubrick.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that. That's a very it's a very strange analogy.
Well, I don't think it's that strange, because I think that people put a lot on Stanley Kubrick, and it's not true.
Yeah, I feel like we talked about that in The Shining.
People put a lot on Bob Dylan, and I don't think that's true. There are other examples. I think that, honestly, people have said for years that he refuses, like, you're not allowed to make eye contact with him. I don't think you're not allowed. I just don't think he will meet your gaze. I think that he is kind of socially awkward, and he doesn't want to make eye contact with you. I don't think that it's a rule. I think, like, what person would do that? I don't believe that. I think that, he just won't make eye contact with you. I think that's
like what is this? Is this like Spamtopia? You can't look people in the eye?
Yeah, he's not Lauryn Hill. Like, you can look at him,
that was a Smiling Friends reference.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I apologize. I didn't get that. Shit. But yeah, and I think that people hear his music, and again, it's very poetic. It's up for interpretation. The lyrics are both in story, in their analogy, and their metaphor, and there's a lot to grab onto. And so, of course, you would associate all of that with the person who made it. and tack on this mythos.
Yeah. I agree. Especially, I feel like in this time, I feel like we veered away from the movie
Sorry.
for a little bit, but I think no. But I kind of like it though, because I feel like, the movie does its best to kind of answer these questions. Because like we said at the top of the show, this is more of a portrait of a myth. And so I think, like, oh my God, I lost my train of thought. There it is. That during this time, in the 60s and 70s, during, this era of music, I feel like there was a lot not known about the artists that were coming out, and kind of like what you were saying, that people started putting things on him, sort of imposing their uh um not identity, but they were can't think of the word. But yeah, I feel like I'm saying the same thing as you, just less eloquently, because I can't think of the word, and it'll hit me when I'm like dead asleep, and then I'm like, that was it. Gotta text Jeremy now. Call you in the dead of night, like that was it, and you're like, it's 3 a.m.
Just re-record it. It's fine.
But yeah, and I think that's again why the movie decides to focus on the myth, because it's almost like we know the myth better than we know the man.
That's true. I'd be interested to see, because again, I don't know a whole lot about Bob Dylan, and I'm sure I could find out very easily if I wanted to. But I'd be interested to see like a complete unknown and how that's going to work, because to me, it's gonna. I mean, I hate to say it, but it might seem boring compared to this, because it'll just be his life like it was, and it's like, that's kind of boring.
I mean, I don't necessarily agree with that, but I do want to see it, just because, again, you're right, to see where the differences lie, and to see what a linear version of a story of the man looks like,
right,
versus this non-linear story of the legend.
Right. Well, and also having the Woody Guthrie, the Arthur, and the Billy the Kid, which are more figurative versions of Bob Dylan. They're not like literal interpretations. They're more like, he sees himself as Billy the Kid in hiding, or he sees himself as, this folk singer with blues influences with childlike wonder, and he also sees himself as a pretentious French poet. And I like that. Again, like, this film does this job very well by painting a picture of a person that even by the end of the movie you still don't truly understand. Yeah. And that's on purpose. I don't think that we're supposed to have anything figured out by the end of the movie. That's not the point.
Yeah, I agree. Each sort of story has sort of a catharsis and an end to each one, but yeah, nothing is really resolved at the end of the movie.
No,
I do want to gush.
Sure, go ahead.
Just real quick. If we didn't say it enough in the Dark Knight episode, fucking Heath Ledger, dude.
He's good.
I miss that man sorely. I can't believe this was technically one of the last things he had ever filmed.
It was his. It was the last completed movie with him still alive.
Yeah, because the Dark Knight, he had completed everything. Because he was filming the Dark Knight and Dr. Parnassus at the same time, right?
I mean, I guess, but he never got to see them finished. He got to see this one finished.
Yeah, and I just, it was kind of like what I what I texted you about James Franco that I'm not going to repeat on camera in case someone misinterprets it. But you know, he was so good, man. Every scene he was in, I was on the edge of my seat. Because I love how Heath just brings everything to the role. I mean, yes, he was a method actor, but it just, God, it was so good. I would
I liked how
say,
they connected Robbie and Jack's stories by having Robbie play Jack in a movie. I liked that.
yeah, that was really cool. I would say those are my two favorite parts of the whole movie is Jack's story and Robbie's story. Um, God, Heath Ledger was so good, man. Well, and Ashley didn't recognize him at first. She's like, "Who's that guy?" I was like, "The guy or the girl?" Because she kind of looked over at the scene when he and Claire were meeting for the first time. I was like, "The guy or the girl?" And she's like, "The guy." I was like, "That's Heath Ledger, dude." And she was like, "Oh yeah," because she didn't have her glasses on. She was like, "Oh yeah." I was like, "Yeah, dude, that's Heath Ledger." Like, but God, I just I hate that he's gone, man.
I know.
Literally, like people say this all the time. Literally gone too soon. Like we are now older than he was.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I look at myself now and I look at Heath Ledger and I'm like, that guy is older than me. Or at least like I am a child compared to him, or like I am immature compared to him. Like he just seemed like so mature and suave and, had his life together. You know,
Yeah,
it's so insane. Is
man.
that really true?
Yeah, he was 28 and we are
Oh,
31,
that's to be
about to be
32.
32.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, man. It truly is a gone too soon. I did sort of an appreciation of posts about him before I got off social media. Just he burned too bright, and I think that's why I love the Robbie story is because I love seeing him on screen, and I really love seeing this version, this character he gets to play, where he's sort of free in a way, like with the Joker, which I'm sure we talked about in our Dark Knight episode, and if not, I'm just going to kind of piggyback a little bit. The Joker's weighed down also by mythos, but also the makeup, and there's so much layers to the Joker. But I feel like with Robbie, this sort of version of Bob Dylan, it felt more like he got to be free. He didn't have to inhabit so much.
Sure. I mean,
which
his character's kind of a piece of shit.
100%. Robbie
sucks.
Robbie kind of sucks, yeah.
Um,
but
no,
I love seeing him.
I agree. His performance was great, and yeah, I mean he was he was good in that. I remember when I first heard about this movie, it was probably like a year or so after it came out. I'm sure I saw it on a DVD, like one of the previews on the DVD.
When those still were a thing.
And I saw Cate Blanchett is playing a version of Bob Dylan. I go, I want to see that because that's interesting to me. And did not disappoint. Cate Blanchett is astounding. I think this version of Bob Dylan is sort of insufferable a little bit. I think he's well, because like they're playing on the 8.5 bit of it also. So I know we haven't done 8.5. We were supposed to this season and we didn't do it.
Maybe one season.
But that movie is about a version of an artist that kind of doesn't exist anymore, which maybe it never even existed, which is a tortured artist that people adore, that people just wait patiently or impatiently for them to complete their new piece of art. and that, they're weighed down by the responsibility of the art, and they're struggling to, to create new stuff. And
Mhm.
oh, woe is me, isn't life so hard? I'm an artist and I can't make art, right?
Yeah.
Um, it's sort of like it's I mean, it's a fantasy. Like that doesn't really exist. And maybe it used to, but it definitely doesn't anymore. Um, because now people don't really care. I think the days of truly idolizing celebrity and artist is almost completely done.
Y- Yeah, to piggyback on that real
Yeah.
quick. Yeah, I think it's because, not to get too, on my soapbox real quick, but I think with the invention of social media, now fans have this parasocial
Mhm.
relationship with these celebrities that they are idolizing. So instead of, you know, um, this is an example that does not fit into the episode, but I was literally just talking about this show with Ashley the other day because we love this show, Freaks and
Oh yeah,
Geeks. Linda Cardellini's character,
love Linda Carter.
her so do I. She's fantastic. Her character goes off at the end of this show to follow the Grateful Dead on tour. No one's doing that anymore. Which is, again, it's this parasocial relationship. Now, yes, people are paying to go see their
Of
favorite
course,
artists in tour, but they're not going to be like, oh, they're going here, 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 here. Let's do that.
I think there's respect and
And
admiration of work, but
mhm.
the idolizing, I think, is sort of almost done. I don't think it's completely done because I mean, like you have artists that are still very well respected and like idolized in their fields, and like they're almost, they do seem otherworldly at times. Um,
Yeah, like the Cult of Swift,
sure, right, exactly. Like that's a good analogy, but
Well, we just lost all our subscribers now.
but yeah, no, and I liked, back to Cape Blanchett. I loved this section, even though I thought that he was sort of insufferable, um, and I kind of, I loved, like we were talking about earlier. I loved the machine guns and the guitar cases. I loved the little Benny Hill type thing that you had with the Beatles on the
Yeah.
lawn. Um, I keep saying she, it's he. I know. Um, and I liked the sort of, I really did like the 8.5 references, and um in the idea that, he's trying not to be pigeonholed. He's trying something new. He wants to do whatever he wants to do. And he's like, fuck you if you want me to be this one thing. I'm not this one thing. I am anything I want to be. And, the struggle of that part of his career, I get. And I think it's well executed in this section. Um, and the motorcycle crash is really interesting because in this iteration it kills him, when in reality people said that it changed his music forever after his motorcycle crash. And so what this film is saying is this version of him died after the motorcycle crash,
Okay.
which I liked. I thought that was very well executed. I thought it was well done. I like the analogy of that. That's really interesting. Um, and of course, Bruce Greenwood. Holy shit!
Oh,
I know.
dude. Dude,
I had to look it up because I'm
they
like, is he been British this whole time? Nope,
has he been fooling us this whole time? The whole
the whole
time?
time. No, he's not.
Um, yeah, man. I'm sure we've said it enough. I love Bruce Greenwood. Um, he's phenomenal. It took me a minute that he was playing Pat Garrett in the Billy the Kid section,
Oh yeah,
because I was like, that looks like, no, that's not.
nah.
Is that Bruce Greenwood? But yeah, Todd Haynes, man, we haven't really spoken about it a lot, but Todd Haynes, this is our second Todd Haynes film we've done this
That's
season.
right.
But I mean, Scoreboard, I mean, the man can't miss. And when I saw Julianne Moore, I was like, well, of course, he's got a lifelong actor that he will always collab with. I think she's in a lot of his projects. I mean, I know she was in his most recent project, December
May
May.
December, yeah.
May
Let me
December.
see if she was in this. No, she was not. She was not in Velvet Goldmine. She was in Far From Heaven. I don't know if she was in Mildred Pierce. I don't think so. And yeah, May December. And yeah, that's about it. But still, I mean, that's pretty frequent.
Yeah, again, yeah. And I think he just, now that this is the second film we've done of his, I think he really knows how to assemble a great cast. Because yeah, again, like Bruce Greenwood, who's not even like, his character's major to the plot, but you know, he's not a major player, but he's still fantastic in every scene he's in.
Yeah, I agree. I'm interested to see his Velvet Underground documentary. I haven't watched that yet. I think it's on Apple TV. I'm a big fan of the Velvet. Well, I'm a big fan of Lou Reed.
Yes, I'm sure. I feel like we've mentioned that on the show before.
Probably. I mean,
it's on Prime.
Okay. It's also a part of their Criterion collection, so who knows? It might.
Is it really? Yeah. Well, gonna have to add that now.
Yeah, I do. I mean, of course, I love the Velvet Underground, but the reason I like the Velvet Underground is Lou Reed. So, yeah, I'd be interested to see that. And I also I did want to see May December. I think he created Enlightened with Laura Dern. Or with Laura Dern. Nope, it was Laura Dern and Mike White. Never mind. I think he just directed a few episodes. Or something. But sorry, what were we talking about? Oh, right.
Todd Haynes.
Right, Todd Haynes. Yeah, Carol looked really good, which I haven't seen. I've heard Velvet Goldmine is really good, and it's sort of like not really based on David Bowie, but there's David Bowie influences, but they couldn't use the music, and that was a whole thing. And this time he goes, we have to use Bob Dylan's music. There's no getting around it. So,
yeah, I did read that he wasn't able to get David Bowie's music for Velvet Goldmine, and and I heard that he wrote Bob Dylan a letter, pretty much kind of outlining the film and why it's important that we use your music. And thank God.
It'd be weird
Bob Dylan said,
this movie would just be so weird if they didn't have his music, because that is Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan is his music. So and I do want to say, like, I know I've talked a lot about, how, he's just a man, basically. But that's not to say that I don't love his music. I think Blood on the Tracks is one of the best albums ever written. I think Times They Are Changin' is incredible. Shelter from the Storm is one of my all-time favorite songs, period. Yeah, so I think he's great. There's a lot of stuff of his I don't like, but the stuff I do like, I really like. And there are people out there who just flat out don't get it. And I also understand them too.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, like you said, there was a lot about this movie that we weren't going to get, which is fine. I don't always want to get everything. I just want to kind of experience it. And I think that's kind of what Todd Haynes was going for. Again, especially with using 6 different actors, is just experience Bob Dylan. Again, we've been saying it, experience the myth that is him. And yeah, man, again, like I said at the top of the show, I really enjoyed it. I didn't find the Ben Winshaw stuff as pretentious as you did, but it's just because I was like, maybe if he had been on screen more, maybe I would have been like, okay, yeah,
It's
but
me. It's my own personal problem. I have a hard time with poetry, kind of. It depends, but some of it to me, I just don't. I just think is it's meaningless. I don't um. And again, I was just reminded of what with Arthur's part. I just like, oh, Allen Ginsberg and Patti Smith. Oh my god, I'm just so angry. And um, and I probably went a little too hard on them at the beginning. I like Allen Ginsberg's early stuff. I like Howl, and I think it's fascinating and important and interesting. I don't think I'll ever like anything Patti Smith does, but that music doesn't speak to me. So
I feel like you went off on Patti Smith on another episode we did.
Did I really?
I want to say you did,
It's
but
so funny.
We've done so many of a lot, like so many episodes that you know what? Whoever's been putting the episodes on the IMDb, find the episode that Jeremy goes off on Patti Smith.
Yeah, I was probably too harsh then too. I mean, and again, I'm essentially mad at someone who potentially has ADHD or autism. I'm so sorry. It's not her fault. I guess I'm mad at the people who are putting so much stock in what she's saying. Yeah, that's who I'm mad at. Allen Ginsberg, I'm mad at him for sure. But Patti Smith, I'm mad at. I guess I'm mad at people that are just feeding into it. I don't know.
Oh my god. Well, with that being said, buddy, are you ready to wrap up?
Yeah.
Yeah. This was interesting, man. It wasn't as daunting as we got to talking. I was worried. I was like, man, I don't know how much I could add to this, but I feel like we had a good conversation. And again, I feel like it opens the door, this movie especially, to having more discussions about Bob Dylan.
Sure. And I think what's going to be fun about not knowing a whole bunch about him is like the moment in the Rolling Thunder when they put the masks on, I was like, oh, that's where they got that in the movie. So, if we continue to learn about Bob Dylan, if we choose to, there'll be things we learn about him and we'll go, oh, that's in the movie, and it's just sort of fun. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. So, Jeremy, are you ready to hear what we're talking about next week?
I am. Yeah. Exciting stuff.
So, I don't know. I'm going to let you choose. You only have two choices.
It's a 50-50 shot.
So when I say choose, I'll give you one or two.
Okay. Well, now here's the deal: is I don't know whether or not I don't know which one you've assigned to. I don't know, like if you're doing in order, in a 1 and 2, or if you're just going one is this and one is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm gonna say 1.
You say 1? Okay. All right. So, let's hope we can keep the momentum going with this one. So, next week, everyone, we are discussing the 1985 dark comedy from Martin Scorsese himself, After Hours.
Cool.
I know nothing about this movie. All I know is that it's because you told me it was a dark comedy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's Martin Scorsese. And I'm like, okay, well, I feel like this was after we did Hugo. I was like, okay, if he can do Hugo, a kid's movie, let's see what his dark comedy looks like.
Yeah, it's just a guy who finds himself in the seedy underbelly of New York for a night and having to navigate, through these subcultures of people he's never encountered before. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
that's After Hours. So that's cool. I'm excited.
Yeah, and it also gives me an excuse to pop in the 4K Criterion I
Same.
got. So
Yeah.
So I'm very excited to do that. Yeah. I don't know how to what else to add to that, because again, I don't know anything about the movie.
Yeah,
and I'm very excited.
I honestly don't really know a whole lot about it. I mean, what I've told you is what I know about it. I remember I started the movie years and years and years ago, and I had to turn it off for some reason, probably because I was tired, and I never picked it back up again. So it's like I've never seen it at all. So,
Well, good. Well, I think that's where we'll end it. So everyone, we hope you enjoyed this episode on I'm Not There, and you know what? We hope you had a happy and safe new year, and we will see you next week for After Hours.